Hello YouTube. So, it's August 2019. Let us imagine it's September 2019 and Thanos snaps his finger and all of Secret Hideout, all of Bedrowood is gone. Alex Kurtzman, all of them are gone. And Sherry Redstone or whoever is in charge of Viacom and CBS has gone insane and decides to hire the least successful YouTuber in the world from Germany to be the new showrunner of Star Trek, which would be me. What would be my plan to turn Star Trek into a viable franchise? And I'll do it like Midnight's Edge here, go through what I want to talk to you about. First of all, the don'ts, the do-nots, what Star Trek should not do. Second, the business end of things, how to make it profitable. And third, the story elements, how to develop the Star Trek story from here on. So first, I gotta talk about the don'ts, the do-nots, what Star Trek shouldn't do, what Star Trek shouldn't be. First of all, has any one of you seen Justice League recently? That movie, Justice League. Yeah. That was a great example of people looking at Kevin Feige, looking at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and saying, oh, we will copy all the surface elements, but not copy the backbone. Like the backbone having a long-term business plan. The surface elements are all the flashy things, the CGI you see on screen. Everything that flashes on screen, that's the surface elements. We'll copy that, but we will not copy the long-term plan. That's Justice League. And that's Star Trek Discovery. We put Michael Burnham in an Iron Man suit and have her be in a space battle with 4 billion shuttles, and that will totally look like the MCU and like Kevin Feige, and yeah, doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, first of all, remember when Google tried to go into the social media market with Google Plus? It was a spectacular failure. Or remember when Microsoft tried to get into the mobile operating system market with Windows Phone? It was also a spectacular failure. You can't just go and copy what other companies do and expect it to work just as well. It doesn't work that way. You should first do what you are good at, and second, if other companies are good at it and you do the exact same thing, doesn't mean you will be just as good as it. Remember when McDonald's tried to sell pizza because Pizza Hut was successful? It also didn't work. When other companies are successful at it and you try to copy it, doesn't mean you will be equally successful. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So you can try that, copy what other companies do, but it won't work. And that's the thing. Star Trek Discovery, it's trying so hard to be the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's trying so hard with the Michael Burnham in an Iron Man suit and all the flashy things and all that everything. It doesn't work that way. Because another company is successful at it doesn't mean you will be. It never works that way. It didn't work that way for Microsoft. It didn't work that way for Google Plus. It doesn't work that way. Try to be the company, try to be the business that you are. Don't try to be the successful business that others are. Try to be the successful business that you are. So if you are Star Trek, be Star Trek. And that's another thing. What made Star Trek successful, besides being a sci-fi show at a time when there weren't many sci-fi shows? One thing is the political thing that Star Trek always was one step ahead, always saying things that others wouldn't say. And when you come to the political thing, if you compare all the classic Star Trek from the first, the original series, all the way to Enterprise, they were doing timeless, really timeless, basic moral stories that would still be relevant in 1,000 years, that have been relevant 1,000 years ago, like TOS, A Private Little War. Proxy Wars is a story that one of the defining moments of my country's history was a proxy war, the 30-year war from 1618 to 1648. And there are still proxy wars. And there will be proxy wars in 1,000 years. It's timeless, basic moral stuff. And what shouldn't be done is current events kind of things. Like, that's how Simpsons failed. That's how South Park failed. Going total current events, things that are relevant today, but will be completely irrelevant a year from now. Like all the political stuff that Star Trek Discovery is doing is complete current events. It's what's trending on Twitter, or what politicians now are saying. They're saying, instead of saying what would our civilization be in 200 or 300 years, they are saying, let's take a problem from today, and the solution is, let's quote a politician from today. Like, let's have a problem from today, like Emperor Jojo saying, don't be so binary, and they are pansexual, blah blah. And let's quote what Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would say. That, first of all, is completely irrelevant to 180 countries in the world right now. And after the election in 2020, it will be completely irrelevant to Americans too. So in 2021, the complete points that this show is making will be irrelevant. Nobody will care about it anymore. In 2021, the show will be completely worthless. Compared to Star Trek from TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, they made timeless moral decisions that will still be relevant in 1,000 years. Like Enterprise Similitude. They had this story that Trip was dying, but Phlox found a way to clone him really fast and steal an organ from the clone, but he had to kill the clone for Trip to survive. That's a really basic moral story. Star Trek Discovery, in turn, is making stories. What is relevant for the 2020 election? And after the 2020 election is done, nobody will care about it anymore. The stories will lose all their meaning. So yeah, Star Trek should focus on making points that will be relevant for 1,000 years. Basic moral points. Basic judgments on racism and morality and treatment of minorities and treatment of the disadvantaged. Star Trek has always been really good at that. Basic things about how we want to be as a civilization. Basic things. What it shouldn't be is things that are current events that will be irrelevant in 2021. Anyway, so far for the don'ts. How should Star Trek actually be done? We talked about Star Trek isn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It isn't. It can't be that big business, big effects kind of thing. Marvel is already doing that. What is Star Trek good at? Star Trek is good at the connection to the fans. You know the reason we all know Star Trek? It's because the fans did a letter campaign after TOS Season 2 to renew it for Season 3. The fans. You know that story. What that did is make Star Trek have the minimum amount of episodes to go into syndication. If Star Trek hadn't gone into syndication, it wouldn't have been the phenomenon it became. Everything is owed to the fans. The first Star Trek conventions were done, organized, paid for by the fans. First Star Trek conventions, they were all fan-based. Most of the merchandise was fan-made. Everything was done by fans. What Star Trek is good at is the connection to the fans, the interaction between the franchise and the fans. So, if you want Star Trek to be successful, build on that. First of all, point one, the CBS rules on fan films. It's don't have Star Trek stars, don't be longer than 10 minutes, blah blah blah. Delete all of them. Get rid of all of them. Turn it into the complete opposite. The new rules for Star Trek fan films should be: first of all, there are no rules. Rule 1, there are no rules. Rule 2, fan film producers cannot publish their fan films anymore by themselves. Fan films have to be submitted to the owners of Star Trek. The owners of Star Trek will publish the fan films on a dedicated channel, monetize it, and pay half of the monetization to the creators and keep half of it themselves. Let's run through it again. Fan films can be made without rules. You can raise all the money you want on Kickstarter or GoFundMe, make your fan film. You cannot publish it yourself anymore. You have to submit it to Star Trek. Star Trek will publish it, monetize it, keep half of the monetization, give you the other half. What this does is, first of all, create a big amount of profit for Star Trek. But on the other hand, people would be able to live off Star Trek fan films if they are good, like Star Trek Continues or Exena, for example. And in the monetization, they generate like 100,000 a year. The creators would get 50,000 a year, which would be enough to pay everyone involved a decent amount of money for creating fan films, but also putting that same amount of money into the pockets of Star Trek. And do you know how many Star Trek fan films there are? if you go by that number I just said, 50,000 per fan film, and there are like hundreds of fan films. You have lots of millions coming in just from the fan films, but also the same 50-50, lots of millions going back to those who created it, encouraging more people to create it and create it in a high quality. So that makes Star Trek money, makes them money. So, the plan, first thing after the Thanos snap that I mentioned in the beginning, Alex Kurtzman, all of his secret hideout is gone. I am in charge of Star Trek. First thing is, StarTrek.com will go down, will be rearranged, will be made into a platform like YouTube. And first thing that goes up is all the fan films. And those are free streaming. Next thing that goes up is all the actual Star Trek series. You can watch them for a really cheap monthly fee. It will be detached from the CBS kind of crap thing. You will have a dedicated Star Trek streaming service. Let's say $1.99 a month. You can watch all the Star Trek you want on StarTrek.com. And for free, you can watch all the fan films. But in addition to the fan films, some of you may know Motion Comics. Marvel does it. Motion Comics is like you take panels from comics and there's a bit more movement than just having the panels, the lips move, but generally it's like seeing a comic book, just the lips move and there's a bit of movement, and the speech is done by people who are speaking. That will be done with every existing Star Trek comic. They will be turned into motion comics, put up on the free fan film part of the StarTrek.com hosting service. All the Star Trek books that have been made into audiobooks, including all the William Shatner novels, hundreds of novels, Star Trek novels, that have been made into audiobooks. They can be illustrated and turned into the same thing as motion comics, also put on the free service. So on the free service you can watch the fan films, the motion comics from every Star Trek comic book that has ever been done, and motion comics from every Star Trek novel that has ever been turned into an audiobook. All of that you can watch for free. You can binge watch endless amounts of Star Trek for free on that service. It will still be monetized, you'll still be seeing advertisements, it will be making millions for Star Trek, millions every day, just seeing the illustrated audiobooks, just seeing the motion comics, just seeing the fan films. It will be millions every day. So much Star Trek for really the people who want to go deep to watch. At the same time have your paid service, $1.99 a month, that you can watch all the official Star Trek shows. That's really lots of millions coming in every day, every month. So much money just from fan-friendly stuff. Wow, amazing amounts of money. And the advertisements, of course, will be interspersed with all the advertisements on merchandise. You want to buy merchandise, that will all be in there. You want to buy that, make more money for Star Trek, get all the money from Star Trek fans. Oh, that's so good. Get money from Star Trek fans. Wow. This is the way you monetize Star Trek fans to the max. Because all the books that I mentioned, that are audiobooks, that will be turned into illustrated audiobooks, all the comic books, they were all written by Star Trek fans. all of that is fan fiction too, and all the fan films, they are all fan fiction too. And there's millions coming in from that every day. And then the paid service, also millions every day. So you get all those millions every day just from catering to the fans, letting fans contribute. And it encourages more of that. Having more fans write comic books, having more fans write novels, having more fans shoot fan shows. More and more millions coming in. So, last but not least, point 3, where should the stories of the official Star Trek shows go? Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard. If you've seen my previous Star Trek videos, you know that I'm not a fan of Discovery, not a fan of Picard. But with a bit of turnaround, they can be turned into something. First of all, Picard, let them run whatever story they want to run for the first season. It's probably going to suck, but after that, there's a potential to do a Gene Roddenberry story after that, actually. You know the Star Trek Voyager episode, Distant Origin, where they meet dinosaur descended species in the Delta Quadrant, and so potentially you could have a story like Earth's Final Conflict in Star Trek Picard Season 2, that the aliens from Voyager Distant Origin decide to return to Earth and settle on Earth. After all, it's their birthright to settle on Earth. And have an Earth Final Conflict story develop from that. Go total Gene Roddenberry, and at the same time, Star Trek Discovery, going into the future, it can connect to the story of Andromeda. In fact, it could possibly connect to the story of Andromeda in a way that you could actually make the show with Kevin Sorbo canon. It could actually connect that way. Would be even better, you could put Andromeda on your streaming service, on your Star Trek streaming service for $1.99. That Star Trek Discovery in the future would connect with Andromeda. You could wire the story like that. You could connect the story like that it connects to the Gene Roddenberry story of Andromeda. And have all the Gene Roddenberry stuff fit together. In fact, all of it could be done like that. You could fit the stories from the leftover stories. There's a Gene Roddenberry pilot called The Questor Tapes. There's a Gene Roddenberry pilot called Baffled. It's good stuff. You could connect that, for example, you could finally make a connection to the backdoor pilot of Assignment Earth. That you could make a whole Assignment Earth series that was planned in the beginning, make it a whole series and connect these two pilots into the Assignment Earth story. And that way you could all the Gene Roddenberry stories you could in the end fit together, connect, make it into one whole story, and that would really put together the fan base, the original fan base, but also put together all the exciting stories that were written, make them into one thing. I ideally connect Andromeda, that you could put it on your streaming servers, connect all the stories, make it a real rabbit hole, the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's the lesson you should take from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not the Iron Man suits, but making it a rabbit hole that if you watch one thing, you need to watch 10 more things. Have everything connected, that if you watch one thing, you need to watch all the other things, and it's connected in such a way that you can spend hours and hours and hours and hours just watching the official shows, going so deep down the rabbit hole, watching everything that's connected. Basically, you can spend an entire year just watching everything, binge watching every day, every waking hour you can be binge watching. That way it will be worth it for everyone, all the fans, everyone who pays for it, it will be worth it for everyone. That should be the complete business plan. Make it a complete rabbit hole, completely involve the fans. Make it that way that everyone can contribute, but the content is also so interconnected that everyone has to watch everything, that people who get fans of this stuff, they start watching, they cannot stop, keep paying. That's the way it should be.